Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
All right, team. It's good to be back together. It's hard to believe that we're already into the month of September and moving along here. We've got a guest coming up today that uses a phrase, hyper Chick-fil-A treatment. I've never heard it put together in quite that way, but he said that his goal at his church is to give people who walk on campus the hyper Chick-fil-A treatment. Man, are there places that give you that kind of treatment that's not Chick-fil-A? And my mind immediately goes to the flip side of that over really bad experiences. So I think we've got to at least share one bad experience before we share the really good experience. Josh, can you or Marianne think of one? I don't know which one of you want to go first here.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I hate putting people on blast. I don't want to do that to them, but maybe it's a good...
You can change the names if you want to. It's okay.
Yeah. I'll go blank.com. It's a travel industry company that may want to look at restructuring their refund policies in the midst of a global pandemic is all I will say.
Or with all your musical ability, you could make one of those fun videos that goes viral to help them reconsider it.
Maybe so. My brain works that. As soon as you said we're into September, I was like, do you remember that September song? Yeah.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I have zero musical abilities. I love it when people can do that. Marianne, what was a bad experience for you?
There is a local grocery store that probably the world knows about, but I'm not going to mention them. And I do call ahead. Like I order my groceries online and I go pick them up once a week. And this one particular supermarket, every single time I order from them specifically, they load the stuff in my car. I drive home and my order is crazy messed up. I don't have the things I need. So it got to the point where I would have to go in my trunk before I left the store and check through all of my groceries and make sure I had the right things before I even drove home. So we moved. So I've got a new supermarket to try their pickup order. And so I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping I start it tomorrow. So I'm hoping that when I place my order, that everything's in there. And I mean, guys, it was majorly missed things, not swapping brands. But it was more, I needed laundry detergent and I got
dish soap.
Exactly. Yes. Those are the kind of things that were just so wonky. And it just frustrated me. And it was things that I needed. And so it was just, so it's frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you from experience, dish soap and laundry soap do not work the same in a washing machine. I learned this in college trying to save a few bucks. Needless to say, the landlord was not very happy.
I think an organization that I absolutely love, the one in my area has won my heart, and I hear this from a lot of people, is Costco. I don't know if you guys have Costco near you or what your thoughts are about Costco. Costco, I have a wonderful experience at Costco. They, from start to finish, when I walk in the door, find what I need, to walking out to my car, I just have I feel like it is near the Chick-fil-A experience. I feel like Chick-fil-A gets it the best of every single business. They get it the best, but Costco comes really close. I really support, they are a little more expensive, but I will tell you, I will pay what I have to pay to get the Chick-fil-A / Costco treatment.
Yeah, yeah. For me, there are stores, and I don't want to name the names either, like Josh said earlier, but there's two different hardware stores. When you go in one, the people ignore you. When you go in the other, if you get within 10 feet of them, they're like, hey, can I help you find something? There's a huge difference. But at the same time, that one who is great on the floor personalities, they in my area don't have self-checkout, and the other one does. And so I keep going back, I'll have self-checkout in there. And the same thing's true of department stores. We know the ones we go in that are clean and wide aisles, and the ones we go in, we need to take a bath when we get out because we just feel dirty and rank about that. My favorite, though, the one of the best experience, and you guys are going to be shocked with this one, I think, it's an insurance company. I have been a member of this insurance company. Yes, I am a member. I vote on board members. I get every year they send checks back to, and if, by the way, if you participate in their products, you are automatically a member. That's the way it works. It's USAA. That's a Texas-based company. It is originally, you had to be military officer to be a member. Well, about a decade ago or longer, they opened it up to any military person or dependents of military. So now my kids get the full benefits of being a member. And so we have all of our insurance. We have they offer banking and investments. And I know this sounds like a commercial for USAA, but they are hyper Chick-fil-A, and they always have been. And they treat you wonderfully. And for me to say that about an insurance company, I know sounds surprising, but they're it for me. How about you, Josh? What's your great experience? Hyper Chick-fil-A company.
Well, I have a couple. One, probably will never hear this, but the Main Street Bistro, and it's a small business, and it's called the Main Street Bistro in Hendersonville, and they just reek of passion for what they do. Like the guy is just an amazing. He's an amazing man who is very passionate about his business, and it's just a little cafe. But he goes around to individual churches and everybody, and he just does a really great job. He comes from behind the counter to walk you through the menu every day. He's just very, very great. Knows me by name, knows what we like. He gives you free samples of everything just to try it to see if you want to, try a new product. It's very good. But I'm going to have to go to Disney.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Customer service and an entire experience. I mean, everything has been thought out, and it never disappoints, and I've even in the midst of what could be cataclysmic situations at Disney, they seem to have, it's just, I never walk away disappointed, and I go, wow, that was better than I even thought it would be.
Josh, let me ask this question. Last year, D6 went to Orlando, and to piggyback on that, our whole family, our adult kids, our son-in-law, our daughter-in-law, all six of us just had a wonderful family vacation. We know how it is. So kind of like we talked about in video games on a previous episode, our kids tend to know a little bit more about things than we do. And my kids said, hey, Dad, they just kind of scouted out the whole Disney experience. And one of the things they told me I did not know is that you cannot ask a Disney staff a question that they will say, I don't know. They're not allowed to say, I don't know. They're not allowed to dismiss you in any way. They will come up with a tactful answer. Do you know this? Are you aware of this?
Yes. And one of the things, it's funny, they will not even point. If you ask for directions, they will not point you and tell you where to go with one finger.
Really?
It's always at least a two finger, and it's very gentle, and they will guide you or direct you to the way you need to go or take you there.
Yes. Yeah, I did not know that. So, it's fun to see how people deal with these kind of situations in there. And, we've gotten to a point, I was sitting at a table. I'm older than obviously the millennial or the Gen Z, but I was sitting at a conference, and this was a good 10, 12 years ago. I was sitting at one of the big conferences around the country we were exhibiting at and speak at often. And our team was at the end of the day, and we'd gone out for a meal, and we're sitting around in a very prominent Italian national chain restaurant, and we were kind of relaxing, and they were slammed. But the server, kind of like you were talking about, Marianne, they were missing on the food. Our drink glasses were sitting empty. And again, this was a pretty high end. We were all going to pay about $20 a plate for our food in there, $21. And they were missing. And one of the young guys in our organization looked at me and says, "Ron, you're kind of frustrated, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I was counting on just rewarding our team. And I feel like y'all are, missing being loved on by this experience." And he looked at me and he says, "Well, my generation has gotten to the point that we don't expect high-end customer service." And I thought, how sad. And I've never forgotten that remark, because I want to treat people that way. But on those rare occasions where I'm out with our team, I want our team to be treated that way, not, and it is, unique. And I will tell you, our guest today, Rich Mace, he is a key leader at his church. And I have been on campus. I've been with Rich. I've been with his team. I've been in that environment. And I'm going to tell you something. They have not just used these as a set of words that they want the hyper Chick-fil-A treatment for their team coming on, but they have thought it through in every capacity. And I've been in his children's area where the special needs ministry meets, and they thought it through even down to the hinges on the door. You can't stick your fingers in between the door and get them caught in the door. They've thought through the hinges. I mean, they have literally went through every level of how this looks, how it flows, the different rooms, the segments. It is not just architecture, it is culture. Wow. And I think you're going to be blown away. He's calm in this interview. Rich is normally a very, bubbly person. And you'll hear when he's asked these questions, he's thinking it through. He's giving some really incredible answers in here, and their church has done it well. And if you're not thinking about special needs, we need to be thinking about special needs. There's two things that have really come onto the scenes of late. Special needs has been around for a little bit. People are finally coming around. And the new one, which we'll start emphasizing in this coming year, is trauma. The impact of trauma on kids as they develop into teenagers and into adults. And that can be especially true in the adoptive world. And we cannot dismiss those two areas. So when we come back from this break, Rich Mace is going to share special needs ministries with us.
Scripture and modern-day research attests to this truth. When one generation commits to and engages in the discipleship of another generation, people of all ages know Jesus and become more like him. This commitment requires us to say goodbye to the myopic focus on the next generation and instead broaden our view to every generation. Every generation. Moms, dads, grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, kindergartners and middle school students, college freshmen and newlyweds, each one awakened to Jesus Christ and living out a vibrant faith with one another. We invite you to adopt this focus at the D6 Conference, a family ministry event built on the Deuteronomy 6 philosophy of generational discipleship. You will experience 3 days of strategy, resources, and action steps to help move your church forward together. Discover what's in store at d6conference.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the D6 podcast. We've got Rich Mace with us. He's the Executive Director of Family Ministries at Victory World Church in Norcross, Georgia. Welcome.
Thanks, Jeremy.
You have over 140 nationalities in attendance in multiple campuses. That's incredible.
Yes, we do. It's really been a beautiful thing to be a part of for over going on our 22nd year as a family. We've been part of Victory and have seen it grow with this deep intentionality of making sure that racial reconciliation was really a calling card for our senior pastor and our congregation. Wow. And so we can probably, we can say without a doubt that we're probably the most ethnically, racially reconciled church in America right now.
Love that.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Well, while you're here, you're leading a session on the 5 areas we need to consider when doing special needs ministry, which is its own. Churches need to embrace that as well.
Yes.
And it sounds like you guys have been able to pull that off. So what I'd like for us to do in our time together is kind of just bring us into your session.
Sure.
Those 5 areas. What's the first one?
Well, so as we started with the session yesterday, one of the things that I really wanted to kind of set the framework for is that the 5 things that we learned as we started our special needs ministry, it wasn't that it was really special needs, but this was really radical hospitality ministry. That's really what we were trying to accomplish, because we wanted to make sure as we were doing this, and some of this is hindsight to where we are today, but knowing that these families are in a space where they need a different experience. They needed to receive something different than what was outside in the world, and when they came to the church, that we went the extra mile for them, because their days are difficult, their nights are long. And we wanted to make sure that when they're here, that we go over and above. We give them the hyper Chick-fil-A treatment. And so that's kind of what we endeavor to do when the families show up. So the first thing that we looked at when, in hindsight, as we were developing our special needs ministry, and now 12 years on the other side of that, we have about 173 students, families that come with 63 volunteers. And so we offer special needs ministry, radical hospitality ministry to these families on Sundays, and we can have anywhere from 6 or 7 kids upwards of 10 or 15 kids in our special needs in our sensory room at various ages. And that's kind of another thing that we're grappling with, is the age bracket of how we separate and ultimately getting the kids that are 3 to 5, 3 to 7 in one room, and then the children that are a little bit more physically advanced but may not be cognitively advanced, and how do we separate that, because there's a safety factor. So the first thing, as we were going down this road, that we would do differently is we'd ask more questions. We would definitely be more intentional about the questions we ask. Our special needs ministry was developed out of a reactionary need to a family that was in their early 40s, and they discovered that they were pregnant, and when their baby was born, they discovered that she had Down. And we as a church at the time had an adult learning environment, adult worship environment, which is code word for no kids allowed in the sanctuary. And so that really kind of led us to this space where we needed to, we have to do something to help this particular family, which then opened the door for our understanding that there was a lot more families out there that we had not been aware of. And so in that space, we said, we've got to start asking some questions, more questions of our leadership. If we're going to do this, do you understand what the cost is? What is it going to take for us to do this? What are the resources that we're going to need to do to earmark for this new ministry? We would have asked more questions of families that would have been some of us been in relationship with, that we may have found out that they had a challenge with the child. 10, 12 years ago, autism spectrum disorders, those things there was still some stigma associated with it, so not a lot of parents were coming out and saying, well, my child has a challenge. You wouldn't necessarily notice that, but if they had a physical dependency, if they had a physical exceptionality, it was easy to see, but the ones that didn't. And so we had to have more conversations, not just with our leadership, but with those that we were in relationship with, and those that we would ultimately serve. Well, what is your need? We can see some things, and we may not be able to see other things. So you tell us, because we really need to understand how we can best serve you. Then we found out, once we do that, those people had relationships with folks that were already partnering with them in some way, and ultimately those people would be our volunteers. And so asking more questions of those that would come alongside and serve with us. What is your availability? What's your skill set? How can you come and help us as we provide this service for these families? So that was really kind of the first thing, was that we asked better questions. In that kind of led us to the next side of that, is we needed to do a better job of listening. because, we have an agenda, we have the things that we think we need to do. It's kind of the Donald Rumsfeld. There's known knowns and known unknowns, and then there's unknown unknowns. And that really comes from they didn't ask enough questions, so we didn't want to fall into that trap. And so we asked those questions and really listened intently for what it is that they were saying, and then listen for what they weren't saying. A lot of times we may hear just a little bit of their story, and due to perhaps some of the shame that they might have been dealing with, and maybe some denial, that they might not give us the whole thing. And so what that did is it helped us to ask better questions. By really listening for what's not being said, we could come in and ask better open-ended questions to kind of draw them out and let them know, look, we want to really provide a safe space for you guys. We care about you, we love you, we want to give you something that's a different experience. So just give us a little, and we'll give you a lot. So that's kind of the second thing, is that we really needed to listen to what they were saying and what wasn't being said.
Well, we've got asked really good questions and listened to the answers, and you've also already got a ton of tips on how to set up special needs ministry. I think one of my favorite parts is hearing that your heart behind it was one family.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that's incredible. Speaks to the heart of your church. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and after we come back, Rich Mace is going to talk to us a little bit more about what it takes to build a really cool special needs ministry in your church. If you don't have this, I hope it's inspiring you to consider and think about how you can reach these families in your community. And I hope you're enjoying getting to know Rich. After the break, we'll be back with more from Rich Mace.
Are you looking for a way to equip families to do discipleship in their own homes? D6 Everyday offers a new at-home bundle option, so you can reach families where they are. The same great D6 Everyday resources now bundled to fit your family. D6 Everyday at-home bundles are a great way to promote discipleship at home, especially during COVID-19 restrictions. Many churches and small groups are not gathering for worship or discipleship training, but you can resource them with teaching helps for the parents and devotion magazines for every member of the family, or about the cost of a Chick-fil-A meal. For more information, visit d6everyday.com.
Hey everybody, we're back. Thank you for listening to this and being a part of this discussion on special needs ministry. And Rich, thanks already for what you're doing, but let's keep going. What is that third thing that we need to consider that you guys have learned in special needs ministry?
All right, Jeremy. Well, diving back in, the third thing is definitely that we, in the midst of listening, we would have done a little bit more waiting. And when I say waiting, it's kind of like what Habakkuk says, is when we write the vision, then we know it will come to pass, but we're to wait patiently. And in that waiting, it may have seemed like waiting for the parents that we weren't doing anything, but what we were really doing is our due diligence. We were developing a plan. We were in the middle of our discovery of the questions that we were asking, the things that we heard. We took that and said, okay, now what do we have to do? We've got to build a budget. This is going to cost some money. We have to address the space issues. Do we have the space for it? And this was some of the things that we had talked about in the breakout yesterday, because we had some churches that are just walking into this endeavor, and they're in older buildings. And sometimes you've got some ADA issues that you have to address. Do you have an elevator, or do you have a ramp? If you want to offer this, there has to be accessibility things that they have to consider. So that was a big part of it. Additionally, the resources for equipping the room. Will it be a separate part of children's ministry, or is it going to be inclusive? If it's inclusive, then some of the children will naturally may be able to go into the space with the other children that don't have exceptionalities. Well, that will require some additional one-on-one assistance, which we call buddies. But if you have a separate sensory room, will you have the right manipulatives? Will you have the right lighting? Will you need some padding in the area to protect against children that have a tendency to run? These are all some of the things that is really important to think of. Other resources that are available in the community. Virtually every college and community college, they have intern programs set up, special needs programs that are for people for education, that they can come and build those relationships, start some networking with them so that they can come and either observe or give you tips or even send some of their students to come and participate in the care of the children. Those are some things that we would have definitely done differently in the past. We have resources, but there's so much more out there, and that is something I would encourage anybody that's listening, whether you're in a small community or in a big city. Every hospital, every medical facility has to have somebody that can sign language. They have to be able to use ASL, and so that in and of itself, often we don't think of that as an exceptionality, but someone that has difficulty in hearing or speaking, that's a special need. And so you can start there, and those people have relationships with other people in the special needs community and the education community, and that you start with one area and then you can build your network. So that was something that in the planning stages we would be thinking about those areas. The other thing would be outreach. Just as a church, doing some outreach to the community. And it's not necessarily a respite, but it is making a declaration to your community, hey, we want to be able to serve you, and we're going to share the love of Jesus, and we're going to do an outreach that has a component or is directly geared towards that community. And I can tell you, when that gets out into the community, that has to be a measured thing, because when people hear that you're doing an outreach for the special needs families, those families will say, okay, well, there's a place for me to go now, so you better be ready, right? So those are the things to be aware of. And then in the training aspect, which is the fourth thing that we would have, in hindsight, done a little bit differently. Our families, our special needs families, are families that require radical hospitality. Their experience out in the world is what it is. You get people that can be offensive, you can get people that are sensitive, and then you have everyone in between. And the church is similar in that you have everybody from all walks of life. And so the etiquette that needs to be communicated to the people that are serving our families, and even the people in the congregation, to let them know, hey, we're going to have some new families that may be coming, and we want to be careful about how we choose our words. We want to be precise with our words so that they can hear that we do love them, and it may take some time for us to understand how to communicate properly. So that kind of training. Other training for our volunteers, again, if we build these relationships with these outside organizations or even Christian-based special needs organizations, to have them come in and do a one-off training or maybe a series of trainings to help those volunteers with how to care for perhaps a medically fragile child, or a child that has some severe spectrum disorders, and how we need to help them. Share a quick story. One of my very close friends that I've walked with for a while, his child when he was much younger, he's about 10 now, but when he was much younger, we were still in kind of the formative stages right now. We were about 5 years into it, and I got a call on the ClearCom saying, hey, Pastor Rich, I need you to come to the resource center. This boy is duking it out. He's swinging for the fences and he's hitting people. And so I ran over, I got in there, and I didn't know what to do, because it was a little hectic situation. And so I just went in and I talked to him and I grabbed him and I held on to him. Well, his dad shows up, and he said, no, you need to let him go. And he was still swinging, and I said, okay, and I let him go, and then he was able to talk his son down. Well, at the time, I didn't know it, but the dad was extremely upset with me. And the only reason I found that out is because we continued to have a conversation, and I said, I didn't know what to do. I was trying to protect him, and I was trying to protect my volunteers and staff. And so in that moment of vulnerability with him, it made a bond with him. He told me much later, he said, the moment you said that to me, the moment that you were honest and vulnerable, he said, I knew you were my guy. And to this day, he and I are best friends. And so part of that training component in hindsight is making sure that we're honest and that we're humble enough to say we just don't know. And if we can be vulnerable, then that moves the bar down just a little bit further, so that the parents of these children can see that our motives are pure. We're not just putting a ministry together just to check a box, that we really want to do this. So I think that's one of the big parts of that training. And then the last part of it, to be all honest, is that we needed to be more patient. We wanted to run ahead and do some of this stuff, which was wonderful. But in the midst of this, sometimes we could get ahead of ourselves. At one point, we had hired a very skilled young lady who was clinical, and she had a deep clinical background, but she didn't have the radical hospitality component. And all of these parents, they already have the clinical side. They probably can write books about their own particular need. And what we needed was somebody that could extend the love and the hands and feet of Jesus on a high level. And so in the middle of that, having her as part of our team, while she was very gifted, she wanted to do more, and we wanted to do more. But the patience part of this is we're a church, and there's only so much that we can do within the confines of the ministry. There are organizations geared for doing the extra things, going the extra mile, but within the confines of the church, we provide what we can. And so that's the tension always that we have to manage. Even to this day, we have, like I said, over 170 kids that come, and we need more space, but we just don't have it just yet. And so we have to encourage families to go to a different service so that we have the room balance and the things of that nature that help us give them the best experience that we can. And in hindsight too, Jeremy, one of the things that we would have also done is we would have been more intentional about the conversations with the dads, because a lot of times, at least in our context, because our campus is somewhat spread out, and we have the traffic is challenging, and so we have parents that dads will swing up with their family, they'll drop off, they'll go find a parking spot, and by that time, mom's already taken care of, if dad's still in the picture. And we know that's a different conversation altogether. But we would have gone after the dads with a more intentionality to have them be part of the discipleship process, because whether their body is broken, whether their mind is challenged, their soul is got issues, their spirit is still alive, and we want to remove any barriers for both the children and the parents to receive the love of Jesus and grow in their discipleship. And so by going after the dads and incorporating them in the possibility of being in the room with them, or the conversations outside of the room or at the home, if we attempted to include them in a greater way, it would have sent a better message to the families, and now that we do that, we really see a huge uptick in father participation. We went from having just a couple of dads as part of the ministry, actually serving in the ministry, to over 7 in the ministry right now. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, it's a big number, because in our context we have, just as the congregation as a whole, we have a disproportionate number of single parent families, moms and dads either way. And so that's got its own set of challenges as well.
Wow. Listen, this has been gold. If somebody's starting a special needs ministry, you just put like a tutorial together. Can't thank you enough. If somebody wants to follow your ministry, get in touch with you online,
sure.
See what you're doing, where can they go?
So our main website is victoryatl.com, and you can click on the children's link and then scroll down. You'll see the special needs link there. We have an amazing ministry coordinator that is in the lives of our children. All of our team members are so stoked. We have our nursery and our preschool on separate wings, but they join together, and our entire team is geared towards helping any family that feels that they want to take a next step. Know that there's some things that may be not right, but there's enough of an organic conversation that's happened within our special needs community now that know that it is a safe space. And that's the thing. We wanted to create a safe environment so mom and dad know that if we drop our kid off, they can go and receive Jesus, and that their children are going to learn more about Christ.
Well, hey, you've been listening to Rich Mace. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeremy. I really appreciate this.
I absolutely love Rich Mace's practical ideas and steps for setting up this ministry and making this ministry successful. I love his words. They saw the need and they worked as an organization to meet it. And I love that perspective that he asked for God's perspective. They asked for God's perspective and needed to meet a need in the community. And they did everything they could to meet that need. One of the things I value about their steps as they were meeting this need of creating a special needs ministry is they declared it to their community, and they made sure that the community around them knew, families with children of special needs, we want you to know we're a church that wants to serve you. And I absolutely love that. I love that perspective, and that can apply to any need that needs to be met. The church needs to be a place, a city on a hill, as scripture talks about, a city on a hill to meet the needs of those in the surrounding community. And I love their strategy, and I love the practical, specific, detailed ways that they fulfilled this need in their community.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think it was what I thought was eye-opening about it is, like you said, he identified the need, but so often we get excited, we see the need, and it's like fire, ready, aim,
Right.
But he talked about the importance of just listening, and it started with just one family. And he's, it's like scripture says, do not despise small beginnings, because you look at this now that he has 170 kids in this special needs. And we look at these very successful organizations or programs or ministries and think, wow, it must, you just forget where they came from and how it started. But how it just started with one family and the importance of just listening. And he said they didn't get in a hurry. They wanted to ask questions and just listen. And he talked about the value of waiting and doing your due diligence. Like Ron said, they went over every detail. So they weren't getting in, it's not that they were being lagging behind, but really just being very methodical and diligent in the ways that they put this program and facility together, their budget and way they trained people to do this. So it was setting themselves up for success on the front end and laying all that groundwork. And it's a ministry that you really do have to think through everything and the worst case scenarios and what could happen. But when you do that and you take your time and you're, like you said, vulnerable and honest and teachable, they didn't go into it like, well, we know everything. They surrounded themselves with people that have been there and done it, and people that were in the trenches with working with kids with special needs. And those are the parents. They know better than anybody. So I just really thought that was very well thought out, in the fact that the value in taking your time and not just launching before being ready and learning things the hard way.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in and say that if you're a church listening and you think, man, I'm not as big as Victory World Church, we don't have that budget, we can never do that kind of facility. And it may be true. Victory World Church may have put as much into their one children's wing as 2 or 3 other church campuses combined, because they do have that kind of budget. I want you to hear Rich's heartbeat. It's the interaction between their volunteers and their leaders and the parents of the kids with special needs that is the most vital part of this. You can have the best facility in the world, and if the parents don't trust you and don't think you understand their kids' needs, they're not going to leave their kids with you. And so that's your place to start, not with thousands of dollars. It's understanding the kids, understanding the parents, and using this as a ministry to give those parents a short break with the trust that you're going to love on and care for their kids while they're in a worship experience. That's the key here, and these parents desperately need it. Well, I tell you what, we're going to take a look at next week. We're going to be coming back together with Jay Struther. And one of my favorite guys, this a local Nashville guy, Josh, you and I, got that local connection with him. And we look forward to having Jay back with us. Tremendous. I would call him one of the best strategy leaders out there. Super sharp individual. Everybody will love listening to Jay. He's going to come back and talk about multiple areas, but one of the areas that he has recently contributed a chapter to a book is how do we allow the young people who are out of high school, not yet having kids of their own. They might be married, they might be unmarried, but they don't yet quite view themselves as family. How do they fit into this family conversation? That'll be next week. Until then, we're praying for your ministry. We're praying for you and praying for this time for you to see the opportunities God has right in front of you.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.